All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the Johns Hopkins School of Education Master of Science Education Policy virtual webinar. My name is Sion John. I'm the Assistant Director of Admissions at the Johns Hopkins School of Education. Also presenting today, we have Professor and Faculty Lead of the Master of Science in Education program, Dr. David Steiner, joining us today. And before we get started, I would like to cover a few housekeeping topics. First, today's webinar is being recorded. We will be able to share a link with you after the event is complete. Please take a second to see if your mic is on mute and video is off right now. Please have your mic on mute and video off at all times during the presentation. There will be a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. I would like to share the agenda for today's virtual webinar. We will kick off the presentation sharing an overview of the Johns Hopkins School of Education. And then Dr. Steiner will go over the details of the education policy program. Lastly, I'll wrap it up with admissions requirements and leave the floor open for questions at the end. And to start, we are one of 9 schools at Johns Hopkins University. We began offering college courses for teachers in 1909 and then became our own school in 2007. We are proud to share that the Johns Hopkins School of Education is consistently ranked one of the top schools in education by the U.S. News and World Report. And for school enrollment, we have approximately 2,637 students and offer 27 graduate programs, which includes doctoral, master's, and graduate certificate programs. We have a strong network of over 22,000 SOE alums. And for faculty introduction, Dr. Steiner is the Executive Director of the Johns Hopkins Institute for Education Policy and Professor of Education at the Johns Hopkins School of Education. In 2020, he finished serving as a member of the Maryland State Board of Education and the Maryland Commission for Innovation and Excellence in Education. He currently serves on the board of Core Knowledge Foundation and the Relay Graduate School of Education. And most recently, he was appointed to the Practitioner Council at the Hoover Institute, Stanford University. He previously served on the board of Urban Teachers. He also served as Commissioner of Education for New York State as the Clara and Larry Silverstein Dean at the Hunter College School of Education and as Director of Education at the National Endowment for the Arts. And at this time, I would like to hand the floor over to Dr. Steiner.
Thank you. I imagine you'll be managing the slides. So
yes,
by all means, let's move to the next slide. Good afternoon, everyone. Delighted to be with you. Thank you for joining us. Just a quick word about why we brought this program into being. Essentially, when I was Commissioner of Education in New York State, I was looking for folks to join us in what was a very large department, over 3,000 people working with me, who would have the skills to help my senior team and I to make policy decisions based on research and would speak the language of education policy, including a variety of different elements, including finance and legal and political. And it was really tough to find these people. And I found out during my tenure that it was hard for my colleagues across the United States, running states and running city schools of education, to find them either. In the old days, these big departments of education were essentially regulatory. They made sure the law was followed. They ticked the boxes. In the last 10 to 15 years, that's changed out of all recognition. We now expect our departments of education to be innovators, to lead change in policy, to really address the tragic learning gaps between different subgroups of our population. And we see an explosion of different kinds of organizations, not just public institutions of education, but private think tanks, charter school organizations, private school organizations. So it really is a huge landscape. of folks who are trying to impact a $650 billion enterprise serving 55 million school children. We need talent, and this program is designed to give you the talent, the skills that you need to make a difference in education policy. Next slide. The demands are really quite daunting from the outside. We are looking as a group of educational leaders for young people, for people in mid-career, indeed, a whole range of different folks who can do a number of quite complex tasks. Above all else, they can translate research into policy so as to inform policymakers what is really good policy to make and why, and what are the things on the other side of the equation. How reliable is the research? What else could we be considering instead? That involves the capacity to analyze statistical data from a wide range of research. It requires the ability to read federal and state statutes so you understand what the background is, what the constraints are. It means you have to be aware of the politics of education. No use recommending a policy that will have thousands of protesters at the door of the commissioner or the superintendent, and then the media and so forth and so on, unless that's what you're really clear about in advance. It means understanding fiscal issues. After all, if we had no limits on what we could spend, education policy would be very different. How do we judge between a policy that may be inexpensive and have a modest impact, if positive, and a much more expensive policy that has a much greater impact, but perhaps on a different group of students? These are very difficult questions, and it is the purpose of our master's program to equip you to answer them. Next slide. The basic idea here is that you are able to take a comprehensive set of courses that really do speak to where you are in your life cycle. What I mean by that is that, first of all, this is online. So we really do stress that this is largely asynchronous, meaning there aren't very many times when you have to be online. This is at your choice of when you put in the work. The courses can be done in 1 year if you work incredibly hard and don't have too many other responsibilities, or 2 years. We recycle the same topics so that if you decide to take only, let's say, 2 of the 3 courses offered in a given semester, you know that you will be able to pick up that 3rd course in the following year. So up to you whether you do 1 year or 2 years to the master's. We also don't do what I'm afraid is very common, and understandably so, in many other universities, where master's degrees are designed around the interests of the core faculty. So if you look at other masters in education policy, it's not hard to see why certain courses are there. They embody the research interests of the faculty. That can be a great idea, because obviously faculty is very good at describing, or mostly good at describing, their own interests. But it actually may end up not preparing you for the job market, for the real needs that are out there. We did it the other way around. I began with my team to design these courses based on what I knew we needed out in the world, not on what I or other faculty at Johns Hopkins happened to be specializing in. And so, quite apart from a faculty that is university-based, you will have among your instructors folks who aren't university-based at all, but have very senior policy experience. And that really does set our program aside from others. I think in many other cases, the idea is you take these courses and it's a good preparation for the doctoral program, right, that is offered later. at the same university. Now, of course, you can take our master's and then move on to one of two doctoral programs at Hopkins, but we don't design the program that way as an academic program. We design it as a program for the real world. Next slide. As I said, the program is flexible. It is designed to be completed in the year if you are willing to take a very heavy course load, including 2 in the first summer, 3 in the fall, in the spring, and the second summer. But you can decide to do fewer than that if it works better for you. Originally, we had designed the program to have a very intensive week in Washington, D.C., where we would bring really senior experts to a face-to-face set of seminars. Because of COVID, this last year, we did it all online. We had exactly the same format. We had really senior people, 2 seminars a day, every day for a week. And the students really were incredibly positive about the experience. So much so that we are currently probably going to keep that format. It has many advantages. First of all, it reduces the cost to you. You don't have to travel to DC, find accommodation, meals, etc. Secondly, it helps us pick the very top people wherever they are, because they don't have to give up the time to travel to DC. And so while we acknowledge that there was a positive to face-to-face, and I don't want to say otherwise in terms of just that kind of informal team building, we think the positives probably outweigh the negatives. Not a final decision, but it looks like the entire program will remain online. Next slide. So this is the nitty-gritty. I'm going to leave this slide up for a couple of minutes because it gives you a chance to really see the way the whole program works and what we cover. As you can see, and please don't be put off by this, I'll say why in a moment, there are 2 statistics courses. The first one you're exempt from if you've done a statistics course in the last 5 years with a B or better, but there is intermediate statistics as well. And then we cover really the waterfront in terms of what you must know about, from federal education policy to education finance, to understanding research, to understanding the vital aspects of what happens outside the school that impacts what happens inside the school. Clearly a whole course on diversity, looking at the unique challenges of teaching and supporting different groups of our students, and looking abroad. What can we learn from international policy? We also have a capstone project. That is a project that is unique to each student, done by the student, either about the work they're already doing, if their professional setting is in education, or a chosen research topic. I am teaching that capstone project, and I will be working with each student on what will be a requirement to write an op-ed, write a blog, and write a policy recommendation paper. 3 things you may well be asked to do if you end up working in the field of education policy. So this really is a very intense program. Why the statistics? Very frankly, because that's often the hardest skill to find. Right, when I was trying to find folks for the office in Albany, New York, there were a number of people who could write, not as many as I had hoped, but there were very few who could both write a good policy paper and understand the statistics in the research papers they were bringing to my attention. And so it's both capacities that are important. Understanding the policy, being able to write about it, means understanding the statistics in which most research papers are written or with which they are part. So this is the program. People often ask me, well, how many hours a week does one of these courses take? And my honest answer is, it depends on you. Are you a quick reader? Do you find something like statistics difficult or not? In other words, have you found mathematical courses to be challenging, somewhat challenging, very challenging, right? Those are all going to impact how long it takes for you on each course. And the courses are a little bit different. Some of them have a little more reading than others. We try to be modest. We don't ask you to read hundreds of pages a week. It may be 20, it may be 25, it may be 30. Some of it can be quite dense. You will be doing mostly very short papers, not long research papers. Again, this is focused on preparing you for the market, for the responsibilities of helping to move the needle on student performance, not on academic writing. But we do very much stress high quality writing. It is probably the single biggest failing of our education system that we are no longer teaching students how to write very well. And we found that even with students coming to us with quite strong GPAs, that is something we have to work on. Again, why? Because when you are employed in a Department of Education, as someone advising on policy, as someone doing research to policy, you will be expected to write very articulate, compact, well-expressed policy memos. Next slide. We very much think about outcomes. We designed this whole program in a back to front format, meaning we started here. What were the skills and the knowledge that we thought students would need? Then we backward map to make sure that the coursework prepared students for those learning outcomes. I'm not going to read every one of them. It would take too long. But as you glance at them, you can see they're very concrete. This is not, understand the nature of life or why are we here? This is analyze education budgets. Can you do so? Can you not? For those of you who've never seen a city education budget, if you haven't been trained, prepared properly to read it, to analyze it, good luck. I couldn't first time I saw it. Even the fourth time I saw one, I needed a lot of help. So these are very, very concrete skills that we are teaching, and they are the skills that we have determined will best satisfy the needs of the market into which you would be moving. Okay, next slide. Again, this was from a former iteration when we thought the residency in Washington would be held in person. It is now online, as stated here. Again, not written in stone. We think it will be online, but it will still be that very intense 5-day experience. We will give you the dates well in advance because it is absolutely critical that you clear the decks for those 5 days. It is so critical because those are in some ways the most meaningful foundation of your whole master's degree. You will be hearing from really senior people in multiply different walks of professional life. To give you an example, we had a commissioner of education from a state. We had a superintendent of education from a big city. We had Joanne Weiss, who was the chief of staff to Arne Duncan, the former secretary of education. We had the person who is writing the policy for the National Governors Association. You can't miss that because that really lays out for you the terrain of your degree. And so once you get closer to deciding whether to join us or not, and we to having you join us, you will have that date in order to make that decision. So again, it's 9 to 4, very intense for 5 days. Okay, next slide. I've really covered this, the first paragraph, I hope, to this point. Again, can't stress enough how different this is than many programs. And I think uniquely, this is, after all, a program offered by a blue ribbon world-class university, Johns Hopkins. So it combines quality with sensitivity to the real world. Traditionally, the very more modest schools have often behaved more like they are oriented to the market. And the very elite schools seem to think, well, we're above it all. We're just interested in academics. We are insistent on the highest quality of instruction. We are equally sensitive to the demands of the real world of education policymaking. The idea is that this program makes you attractive to a wide range of jobs in the education sector. Many folks who are new to this world are surprised by just how large this sector is. It's not just New York State. That's obviously a big department. It is cities. I'm speaking to you from Baltimore, not one of the largest cities in the United States, but one which has a city Department of Education employing hundreds of people. And that's not untypical. There are hundreds of middle-sized departments of education in districts across the United States. There are think tanks, many of them in DC, but many of them elsewhere. There are non-for-profits. There are mayor's offices where mayors have control of education. There are policy research institutes. It is not a small list. Next slide. Okay, well, this is where I happily hand back to my admissions office colleagues who will talk to you about the nitty-gritty of actually applying and what we ask for in your applications.
Thank you, Dr. Steiner, for the wonderful presentation. So now we're going to continue by going over the application requirements. First, a 3.0 or better cumulative GPA. Applicants must submit a completed application, which can be found on the school's website. Please note the application fee is $80. Official transcripts from all post-secondary institutions attended. Again, this is all official transcripts, including institutions you may have taken courses but did not receive a degree. An essay and a current resume, 3 letters of recommendation, and finally, the GRE is not required for this program. And please note the application deadline for the Ed Policy program is April 15, 2022. There are a few additional steps you need to take in order to complete the application process if you're an international student. You must submit a TOEFL or IELTS score. And if your degree was completed outside of the US, you will need to complete a course-by-course evaluation. Additional information can be found on the school's website. The current tuition for the MS in Education policy at SOE is $1,300 per credit. The total cost of the program with the statistics course is $46,800, and without the statistics course, it is $42,900. For additional information on tuition and fees, please visit the school's website. And if you're interested in applying for financial aid, we strongly encourage you to apply for financial aid when you start your application. The School of Education offers a limited number of partial need-based institutional scholarships each year. SOE's endowed scholarships awards range on average from $500 to $1,500 per semester and are applied to tuition expenses beginning in the fall semester. To see if you qualify for the endowed scholarship, please visit the Grants and Scholarship page on the school's website. Thank you for attending the Ed Policy virtual webinar. At this time, we would like to open up the floor for questions.
I might add one thing as you're thinking of your questions, which is that while we absolutely do look for a 3.0 or better, you may have a situation where you have just below a 3.0 in a given year. There may be reasons why your GPA dipped a little bit below. We will not reject that out of hand. We will take into account the whole package. But for example, if it's a lot below 3.0, then this isn't a program for you.
Thank you for explaining that, Dr. Steiner. And while we wait for questions, I can kick us off with some questions because in the Office of Admissions, we do get some frequently asked questions. The first one is, what kind of professional opportunities does this program prepare a graduate for?
Well, that I hope I covered because I spoke about the departments of education, city and state. I talked about the nonprofits. I talked about the think tanks. I talked about the mayor's offices. But I do see a question here. Are there a lot of current former teachers in this program? Yes, there are. We had, I would say, 2/3 of the current cohort are either teachers or just have been teachers and are looking for a career change. There's a question, I think, more applicable to the admissions office about where they should go for talking about financial resources.
Yes, so there's a question on, are there any staff or resources to help potential students to identify financial resources for attending SOE in addition to the 500 to 1,500? So unfortunately, we don't have any specific scholarships for the Ed Policy program, but we do encourage our students to fill out the FAFSA form and also to look for external scholarships outside of the program and outside of SOE.
Do you have many current district and school administrators? We have several who are involved in ed reform. In fact, we have one very senior person taking the program. She could frankly teach one of the courses. She's at a well-known think tank, but she needed some of the skills that we offer. And so she's taking the master's as a whole. So we certainly we have an assistant district figure, one of the district superintendent's office colleagues. And so, yes, the short answer is yes, but not many. That would not be accurate. I frankly think that that's because this was the first cohort that is in the program right now. We only started the program last year. And so because of COVID and the startup, the most accessible group of folks to reach in terms of letting them know about the program were teachers. They were the most obvious group to go to. I know that the office that is working with us to make this program better known will be doing a much wider outreach this year. And my guess, it's just a guess, is that the profile will change a little bit. I think we'll still get a good number of teachers or teachers who are just moving on, but it should be a more mixed cohort moving forward. Was the transition from being a teacher to wanting to pursue a career? Yes, exactly. It was a transition from being a teacher to wanting to pursue a career in ed policy. Capstone opportunities to delve into ed policy subjects. Can you discuss any of the notable subjects previous students have covered? It very much depends on whether they're situated in a school district with access, say, to doing a survey in that district or examining some aspect of the district, or if they are not, right? So if they have just left the district, or if they're not teachers. We have a couple of folks who are not in the education world, but want to move into it, in which case they will study a particular issue that is of interest to them. For example, one student is working on the question of how good is our research base on this question of teaching social and emotional well-being. In other words, everyone talks about it, but do we know that the programs work, and to what degree, and to which programs? So that's a question, a research question. From a student who's situated in a school district, she is happening to research whether the new form of justice that the district has embraced for school policies is actually reducing the number of suspensions and detentions in the district, whether there's data on whether this has made any difference, and if so, in a positive difference. In regards to the stats courses, could this course be completed in community college? Yes, I think it could, if as long as you do well, and as long as we can probably from a community college, we would want to see the syllabus just to make sure that you had covered what we would cover, or most of it, in the intro course. As a recent undergraduate majored in elementary education, best to take a gap year and work in my school district. That's a good question. I think it's really up to you and what the gap year would be. In other words, gap year for the sake of a gap year, no. A gap year that gave you some real world experience. Let's say if you were an intern in one of these organizations, yes, that would be great. But it's not a requirement. Personal experience, being able to create positive or more frustrating due to institutional red tape. So here's a question about the profession as a whole. It all depends. That sounds like a cop-out, but it's not. For example, if you were involved in the Mississippi Department of Education in the last 2 years, you would have been part of a dramatic impact on Mississippi children, because that state has made a very exciting advance in reading instruction based on bringing together professional development, curriculum, teacher preparation. It was a huge effort, and they now stand as an example to the United States. That was a case in which a great deal was done and a big difference was made. I was able, as commissioner, to launch something called Engage New York, which was the first free online high-quality curriculum in math and ELA, now downloaded over 200 million times, used by 1 out of every 3 or 4 math teachers in the United States. Obviously, the team that worked with me on that very large project had a major impact on American education. On the other hand, you may, in all truthfulness, you may find yourself, working with a superintendent who just isn't the greatest leader. And that can be frustrating. So no guarantees. It all depends. Can you talk about the current impact on education as a result of someone participating? Well, yes. I mean, we have somebody right now who is, as I say, very active in a national think tank that is advising multiple state leaders on their education policy. But remember, this is a young program. And that's to be decided in the future as we put our graduates into the field. The internship is not a requirement. We have an internship that we support you to do after the program is over. In other words, if you're interested in a non-paying internship, and I understand that there are only some students who can afford that, and so it's not for everybody. You have to pay credits to Hopkins because we're supervising that internship, but we help place you in institutions we know. So that's very much a choice. I would say we have, I think, 5 of our students doing it this coming summer. The majority, for understandable reasons, chose not to. And yes, we do match those students to the organization before they lead. Acceptance rate is not something we're going to give out yet because we're too young. Let's just say that we make a determination as to whether you will succeed in the program. So we said no to a fair number of people, not because we didn't want a bigger program, but because we felt, based on everything we could see in their record, that they just couldn't manage the program. Right, the academic record was just not strong enough to give us the confidence. So we're looking to include people. This is not accepting 1 out of 25. This is not that kind of program. We want a cohort of between 15 and 25. That's the answer to the next question. So that we think is the right size. And that's what we have right now.
Thank you, Dr. Steiner. Again, while we're waiting for other questions, and I know you covered this one, but we had some students who joined in a little late. But how long will it take if I choose to take courses in the program part-time, 2 courses per term? And do I need to wait a full year to take the courses I missed?
Yes, you do, and it would be 2 years. So it will be two years if you take it part-time, because we can't offer all the courses all the time, because there needs to be a faculty person who is responsible for the courses, who meets with everyone online but synchronously at the beginning of the coursework, who is supervising the links in the discussion boards, who is responding to your papers. So we offer the sequence of courses in that same sequence each year. So if you miss a course, you need to wait until that course is retaught. If you're missing a course or two, if you elected not to take it the first time around, that is heavily at the front end of the program, then of course you can graduate early because you will have finished your requirements earlier.
Thank you, Dr. Steiner. I just received a question from a student. She's asking, is the online seminar the same as the required residency?
Yes, as I explained, you may have missed that coming in a little later. We originally planned to have the 5 days in Washington, D.C. live. We didn't do it because of COVID. It worked very well online, and therefore we probably will keep it online. There's a question for you at admissions about average financial aid met.
So the question is there a percentage for average financial aid met? I recognize that the numbers may be skewed because the program is new. I don't have the answer in terms of the percentage, and I would recommend reaching out to the financial aid department for that question.
Thank you, Denise. A very nice comment there. I think, I created this program with my colleagues because I felt there was a real need for it. I just know that all of us in education policy are looking for this kind of talent, and it's really tough to find it. We just haven't, as a nation, really done enough to prepare folks to work on these crucial questions. We have I hardly need to say to this audience, but there is a national tragedy in the performance gaps right now between underprivileged children and privileged children, and that gap has gotten wider, not narrower, in the last couple of years. Zip codes are still the best predictors of educational performance, which is another tragedy. And as a whole, this nation isn't doing a particularly strong job at educating its young citizens by comparison to our peers. So this is an absolutely vital domain in which to work. Okay, so any last questions? Thank you, Melody, much appreciated. Would you prefer to have some background in education? I mean, look, if you don't, we're not going to say no to somebody who's switching careers, but we would love to understand your thinking about it, just to make sure that you're being thoughtful and careful. We think it's our responsibility to make sure that you walk in with your eyes open. And so we'll be looking very closely at your personal statement and the letters of your recommenders to make sure that the program makes sense. But no, you don't have to have educational background. It just makes it a little easier. Do students who complete the program 1 year also working? It depends. I'm saying that a lot and I apologize for that, but it's true. If you have a part-time job, I think you can manage it depending on whether that part-time job is 10 hours a week or 30 hours a week, as opposed to 35 or 40 or 50. Certainly, if you're working 35 hours plus, it would be really tough. We have we do have a handful of students who are doing it in a year. And some of them are working. And one of them is working not only full-time, but very hard full-time. I know that. So it's really up to you and what you know about your own willpower and ability to sort of silo your efforts. Certified special education. This is my 17th year in high school experience. The pandemic, a large one more effective teacher. I don't know. I mean, it really depends on whether you think if you want to stay in your district, will you be given an opportunity based on having done this degree program to have that bigger voice, right? I think that's really the question. In other words, is there a route for you that is being blocked right now because you can't show the kind of skills that we would teach you? And that's a very personal question that only you can really answer. I'm not saying you couldn't go to another district, right, that might have an opening. But if you really would like to stay in your district, and the fact you've been there for a while suggests you have a wonderful allegiance to that district, it depends on how open they would be to a skill set you don't have right now in terms of listening to your advice and counsel. Okay. Well, then, thank you, Tyrene. This is the information you need to contact her. Dominique Dureau is our program coordinator. She is my administrative assistant. She's absolutely terrific. If you have substantive questions about the program, do email Dominique, and she will always ask me if she doesn't know, but she's been working with me throughout. If it is technical questions about admissions, then obviously you'll want to type in and use the Tyrene's email. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't hesitate to write with any questions that may occur to you, and hope to see many of you in your applications. So thank you so much for joining us and spending this time with us. Really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Dr. Steiner, for being here. Have a wonderful evening, everyone.
Take care, everyone.